After the latest balancing update made Megumi's Rapid Escape uncounterable, a lot of people went crazy saying Megumi was overpowered or that he was automatically S tier. And a lot of these people were honestly being stupid, since all the update did was change one matchup between Yuji and Megumi to be more fair. However, it does show that a lot of people don't really like fighting Megumi, and find him to be very annoying to fight against. So I'm making this video to explain the counterplay to Megumi, and give a few tips on actually dealing with him. Megumi's whole playstyle is completely different from the other characters, and how his moves work is incredibly unique, so it makes sense for people to not know how to fight him. Before we get into the guide though, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel for even more tips and tricks regarding Jujutsu Shenanigans. Now, let's begin the guide. First, let's talk about Rapid Escape. This move is the one people seem to have the most trouble dealing with, and for good reason. The move is stupidly strong and has an infamous reputation of being a free combo starter because of how it holds people in place for a pretty easy block bypass. Generally against a Megumi user, there's 3 ways they'll use it. The first way is in combos, in which case, there really isn't all that much you can do except try and use a counter if you have one, when they try to M1 you after your ragdoll. It is a combo after all. The second way, and probably the most common way, is in neutral as a sort of free combo starter. After the Megumi user forces you to block with Rapid Escape, they'll do a forward dash or a side dash, depending on the distance, and bypass your block. To deal with this, I recommend doing a full 180, because of how block bypassing works, they'll almost always end up hitting what used to be your back before you turned around, ending with them hitting your block instead. This absolutely is not a foolproof method, since smart Megumi users will catch on after the second or third failure, and will just hit you without bypassing since they know you'll turn around, but it's the easiest way to explain it. Trying to turn your block to your dash is the other way to do it, but can be a little inconsistent with how the block angle in this game is. If the Megumi user is up close and M1ing you during the Rapid Escape, then simply follow their character with your camera and hold block. It's really just a test on how well you can track your character if they're that close up. There's a third method to counterplay this, and it's only usable if you have a counter. You can time your counter to their block bypass, and no matter which counter you use, both ragdoll, so the Rapid Escape will end. It's just a matter of timing if you're going for this, though there are good players out there who will try baiting you after you counter them once or twice, so look out for that. One last note about the neutral usage, it's best if you can just interrupt them before they even get it off in the first place, by maintaining constant pressure and staying in their face. Megumi absolutely loves the mid-range, but if you keep attacking them, they won't be able to use their moves at all, and will have to use their M1s to force you back before they're able to do anything else. So applying constant pressure is an indirect way of dealing with Rapid Escape, and also all of Megumi's moves. There's one final use of Rapid Escape that Megumi users try, and it's the infamous 1-2-3 combo. Rapid Escape into Nue, into Toad, into 4 M1s. I'll be honest here, if you don't have a counter, there is no way to counterplay this unless you're counting iframing with Awakening, which doesn't count. However, the Rapid Escape plus Nue combo barely does any damage, and even with the Toad add-on that only works if you don't have a ragdoll cancel, it still does low damage for how many moves it uses up. It's a very inefficient use of Megumi's moveset that isn't too viable except as a finisher, so you can just tank it without much concern, and then go rush down the Megumi since 3 of their moves are now on cooldown. The main usage of Rapid Escape to worry about out of these 3 is the second one, which is a neutral. It really comes down to turning your block around to predict their block bypass, and adapting to how the Megumi user acts after using Rapid Escape. If they've caught on and stopped block bypassing, since they know you're going to turn around, then stop turning around to deal with that. It's not a brain-dead counterplay because the Megumi user can mix up what they do, so you need to actually pay attention when your method of dealing with Rapid Escape fails, and make sure to address whatever problem made that counterplay method fail in the first place. Nue is pretty easy to deal with in neutral. Literally running in any direction will avoid it, and if you want to be a little bit more safe, a dash to either side or backwards will also avoid the hitbox. Nue is either going to be used for mobility with the R, in which case you can try predicting where they'll land and catch them when they touch the ground, or used in combos, in which case there's really nothing you can do. Combo-wise, if you have a ragdoll cancel, then you can use it to avoid Nue, but I'd only recommend this if you're at very low HP and would get killed by Nue, because using your ragdoll cancel to avoid Toad has far more priority, both because Toad is more dangerous, and because you can punish Toad off of a ragdoll cancel, unlike Nue where you just end up in neutral. Simple move that doesn't really need to be talked about much. Toad is also pretty simple to deal with in neutral, and shines more so in its combos. If someone pops it in neutral, block and punish. Simple formula to follow. However, there is one use in neutral that's incredibly tricky, and it's as a counter. A lot of good Megumi users will use Toad right before you hit them, making you get hit by Toad since the move can't be interrupted once the Toad is summoned. To deal with this, it's mostly a matter of not tunnel visioning. If Toad has been summoned and you're M1 comboing the MEGUMI, stop M1ing and block. The N-Lag will let you continue your combo afterwards, and if you don't do this, you will get hit by the Toad, and now the MEGUMI user is the one who holds the combo. In a nutshell, just look out for it and block when you see it. For combos, it'll either come after a down slam or uppercut, or after Nue or Divine Dogs. In all 4 of these cases, if you see them using Toad, Ragdoll cancel. Usually, the iframes from your Ragdoll cancel will avoid Toad, but you can always block to be safe. After this, you can try to go for a punish, but depending on the timing, it might not work. Use your judgment when deciding to go for a punish or not. Finally, Divine Dogs. This move, along with Rabbit Escape, is one of the 2 problematic ones that are very complicated to counterplay. Countering Divine Dogs is all about looking at how your opponent plays. If your opponent is stupid and has no brain cells, they'll spam all 3 hits, regardless of the HP threshold, and waste Divine Dogs, usually after a down slam. If it's in a combo, just tank it. It doesn't deal that much damage anyways. But if it's in neutral, hold the block button until that last 3rd hit is done. Sadly, most MEGUMI users are not that stupid, and this is where things get very complex. Decent MEGUMIs will stop attacking you after you block, and wait for you to unblock. In this case, unblocking and then blocking again shortly after this will counter it. You can then repeat till the Divine Dog uses are out. Basically what I'm saying is to bait them into attacking you by faking aggressive plays, and then blocking when they try to punish you. Good MEGUMI users are far more complex, and will use Divine Dogs and then go for a block bypass. This is something you have to react to, and really you just need to be on guard for a block bypass after you use Divine Dogs. It's the exact same counterplay as Rabbit Escape. If you manage to block them, be careful of another Divine Dog use, since Divine Dogs can be used in N-Lag, meaning that you can use a move while they're in their forward dash to stop you from punishing them. You want to try to Ragdoll them as soon as you can, because Ragdoll immediately takes away all uses of Divine Dogs. One final thing to note is that if you're using Yuji, literally just Manji kick it and all 3 uses are gone. It's a tricky move unless you're using Yuji, and I don't blame you if you struggle with it. There isn't one clear answer to dealing with it, and you do have to respond to how the opponent plays to deal with it. Megumi's Shadow Special is mostly going to be used to make distance, or if in a public server, to pull out a throwable for combos. They can try to use it to close the gap and attack, but the N-Lag on it makes it terrible for that purpose. Dealing with this is mostly just a matter of chasing after them and trying to hit them out of the move. Forward dashes are pretty good for forcing a Megumi out of the shadows, and you really just want to chase them if you're using Shadow Special. You get a lot of time to react when they're coming out of the ground, so you don't need to worry too much about a counterattack. But the move is pretty fast, so you do need to go after them if you want to stop them from widening the gap. For the Awakening moves, I'll try to be pretty brief. Max Elephant's counterplay is the same as Nue. Dash in any direction, or just stay on the move. Look out for it after a Ragdoll and Ragdoll cancel if you can to avoid it. This move exists for combos, and is terrible outside of them. Great Serpent, or as my good friend YB Noodles calls it, the Drake Snake, can only be countered by either interrupting the startup, or using a perfectly timed counter on it. Once that snake is out, you are not escaping it without a counter. It's a matter of stopping them from using it in the first place. Shadow Swarm is easy to deal with. Interrupt the incredibly long startup, or even just make enough distance if you're too far to do that. You'll only see this move in combos because of the startup, and in that case, a Ragdoll cancel can sometimes let you interrupt and punish. Finally, Mahoraga. Good Megumi users will confirm this by spamming Divine Dogs during the ritual, and unless you're Yuji, there is literally nothing you can do about this. If the Megumi user sucks and just uses it without Divine Dogs to protect them, then go wild and interrupt the Megumi. However, with how Divine Dogs works, you really can't do anything to stop it if the Megumi user is playing smart. To deal with Mahoraga, honestly try stalling. It's really tough since getting hit even once pretty much fills up Mahoraga's entire ult bar, but after the ritual bar is out, Mahoraga dies, so that's one way to deal with him. Mahoraga's health bar is pretty beefy, and his hitboxes are weird, which make him annoying to deal with normally. I'll give some tips on counterplay, but mostly it just revolves around getting away from him and stalling out the awakening bar. For his moves, they are both terrible. Divine Pummel will almost always be used in combos, and if someone tries to use it as a guard break, unblock and interrupt them. In combos, you can't do anything, so there's no point in me speaking on that. Ground Pitch on the other hand, will be used after an uppercut. Ragdoll cancel out of that. If the Mahoraga user is somehow so stupid that they try using Ground Pitch on neutral, get up in their face and punish them for being an idiot. The move can't hit you if you're even somewhat close to Mahoraga, and it has way too much startup for some reason, so you don't need to worry about it at all in neutral. Mahoraga's third M1 guard breaks, so try to M-block and M1 him out of his M1 string as soon as you can. It's tricky to deal with and requires you to have some good reactions, so I honestly don't blame you if you can't deal with it. Finally, Mahoraga's defensive passive mode is pretty easy to deal with. If Mahoraga enters offensive mode, just don't attack him. Maybe even take the time to run. You get a noticeable indicator of the wheel turning whenever he switches modes, so you'll know when you have to fight back, and when you can just sit back and laugh at the Mahoraga for trying to be fancy and use a defensive mode. With that, this entire guide to counter Megumi is over. Megumi is a tricky character to deal with because of how unique he is compared to the rest of the characters in the game who are more melee oriented. However, his moves can be countered once you know the tricks of dealing with them. If you found this guide helpful, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel because it really helps me continue to make content for people. I'm New Eternally, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.